Hello everybody and welcome back to the HLTCO YouTube channel. This is the second video of today and it concerns Leeds United because it really does appear as though they are in a sense of turmoil at the moment. I mean, their fan base have reacted to the news that Jack Harrison has officially signed for Everton on a season-long loan with a real sense that things are just going from bad to worse for them. You know, they haven't had a very good start to the season at all on the pitch, I think that's fair to say. A point from behind at home to Cardiff in the first weekend of the Championship season. They then went to Birmingham this weekend just gone. They conceded, I believe it was the 89th minute, they conceded the penalty that saw Blues get the 3 points, obviously being watched by Tom Brady in the director's box. That's a story for itself. But the entire picture at Leeds United at the moment is just an unpleasant one. You know, you've had this whole Willy Gnonto situation in which he has refused to play. I believe that continues to be the case, and Leeds so far, at least, 1:09 PM on Monday, have stood firm, as far as I know, to say that he will not be allowed to leave the football club unless an offer comes in that is deemed satisfactory to them. I think that's a pretty standard negotiating tactic, but whether or not Willy Gnonto stands firm himself and refuses to play is another matter entirely. You know, I've been quite bold on this. I don't think it's particularly controversial as an opinion to have that if you sign a contract with a football club and there is no release clause in that particular contract, then it's up to you to honour that contract. If you look at the situation with Willy Gnonto and Leeds, they signed him from Zurich last summer. He was a young lad. They gave him an opportunity in the Premier League. It didn't work out, of course, because they've ended up being relegated to the second tier at the back end of last season. But quite why Leeds United should be forced down a path in which they have to sell Willy Gnonto for a fee that they don't think represents value for money, I don't know. You know, it's a conversation that has cropped up a lot with Crystal Palace over the years. You know, Wilfried Zaha signed a 5-year contract with Crystal Palace. He has now run that down, of course, and moved to Galatasaray. But throughout the 5-year spell in which that contract was running, there were plenty of people who were saying we were holding him hostage, that he deserved to be allowed to leave. But his value to us was always far greater than what any club was willing to offer. And if you look at Leeds United's situation right now, they want to get back to the Premier League at the earliest possible opportunity. They have put Daniel Farke in there in charge, a manager that's been there, seen it and done it in the Championship, and their hope is that Willy Gnonto can be a key player for them across this Championship campaign and help them get back into the Premier League. Quite clearly, he doesn't see it like that. He wants to sign for Everton, and he has made those feelings known. But as I say, I don't really feel, and this is regardless of how you might feel about Leeds United as a football club. I appreciate, you know, there are a vast number of people that are dancing on their graves, shall we say, and very much enjoying this period of turmoil that they're going through. But, you know, player power is an interesting thing. It sort of ebbs and flows depending on how you perceive the situation currently. And I personally have a great deal of sympathy for Leeds United's fans at the moment because Willy Gnonto is not someone who was at the top of anyone's shopping list from an elite club perspective last summer. Leeds took the time to, you know, seek him out. They gave him a Premier League opportunity and he's now looking to get away at the earliest possible chance. And, you know, there's been a lot of discussion online about whether or not they should continue to pay his wages and how that all works from an employment law perspective. I won't pretend to be an expert on that, but it certainly does feel like a rock and a hard place situation for Leeds, because I'm sure they don't want an unhappy player on their books. No one does, but you still have to have an offer come in that represents value for money. You know, I don't know quite what Everton have put forward to Leeds United over the potential purchase of Willy Gnonto so far. But, you know, it stands to reason that it hasn't been anywhere near enough for the new ownership model at Ellen Road to greenlight it. And whether or not that particular offer is made before the end of the window is a matter of conjecture. Quite, you know, how it all unfolds if that offer doesn't come in and Willy Gnonto is sort of stuck in this period of limbo remains to be seen. I can't imagine under any circumstances he's going to want to spend an entire season not playing and being on strike, because realistically it only harms his progression as a footballer. It would harm the perception of him as an individual, but that's unfortunately the cards that Leeds United have been dealt given their business from previous seasons, and really that's something to sort of unpick in this video, because, you know, you can look towards other players. Luis Sinisterra, Daniel Farke spoke post-match at St Andrews the other day about the fact that he wasn't available for him to select. He didn't elaborate on that as to the exact reasons. I have seen online this morning that it may well be that he has a release clause in his contract which might have been activated, but it doesn't make for particularly helpful preparations for any game at the early parts of the season. There are, for me, significant issues with having a transfer window that is still open for business whilst football is taking place. I understand sometimes it is unavoidable, but it does lead to these scenarios where clubs like Leeds are, being battered from pillar to post, with players refusing to play, players angling for moves, and it stops them from putting together a cohesive tactical plan that means they can have a chance of getting back into the Premier League at the first time of asking. Of course, you look at the previous ownership model. Radrizzani was there, they had Victor Orta. There was a lot of frustration from Leeds fans throughout their time in charge, really. Always felt, from an outside perspective looking in, as though they were flying by the seat of their pants somewhat. I don't think that's a particularly outlandish view to have. Of course, their tenure as owners, or Radrizzani's tenure as an owner, saw Marcelo Bielsa at the football club, and that was sort of this mad fever dream in which Leeds had a fantastic team that they could really get behind, and a manager in Marcelo Bielsa that, from a personal perspective, they all adored. He had them eating out of the palm of his hand, not just because they won promotion, but the manner in which they did it. And of course, he left the football club, Jesse Marsh came in, and it has really felt like a drip, drip, drip of the momentum ebbing away from Leeds United. Of course, the new ownership model now, the 49ers group, are there, but I think the lion's share of frustration from Leeds' perspective, as far as I can see, lies with the old ownership, because they are dealing with a hangover from decisions that were made by the previous ownership model in relation to contracts and the way that they are structured, and maybe the personality of these guys as well, because, and it's a huge part, I think, of football recruitment that often gets overlooked. The individuals themselves have to be the right types. Willy Gnonto has obviously willingly signed for Leeds United in the Premier League, but the way that he has handled himself since they have been relegated does not strike me as the sort of guy that you would want at your football club in the trenches, and maybe that is why they would be better at cutting ties with him, albeit for a fee that they aren't necessarily happy with. But who is anyone really to tell Leeds United what they should and shouldn't be doing with a player who is under contract, who is being paid, and is a key part of their squad if his head is in the right place in relation to them trying to get back into the Premier League? And I saw a lot of people, neutrals, pundits, etc., tipping Leeds as likely promotion candidates this season. It stands to reason, alongside the other two clubs who are of course relegated from the Premier League, that they would be tipped to bounce straight back. But having spoken to and seen replies from Leeds fans today, I think a fair few of them have said that the smart money was always on the need for a rebuild and a recalibration of the way things have worked under the previous ownership model, because it just didn't ever really feel cohesive. And obviously, you can dress things up and perceptions are often deceiving, but it really does feel as though this is the tip of the iceberg for Leeds. And Jack Harrison, of course, was a key player for them across the last couple of years. There's no getting away from that. And Everton, when he does get back up to full speed fitness-wise, will have a real talent on their hands. But I just worry for Leeds, not necessarily in terms of their potential for being relegated again. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. But as I say, those people that were immediately tipping them to get back amongst the automatic promotion places are now, I'm sure, reassessing exactly how they feel about these things, because as much as 1 point from the first 6 available is not a disaster, it's certainly not what they would have hoped for. And really the manner of the off-field issues is the thing that is going to be most concerning, because Daniel Farke is new to the club. I have seen him talk the club up, quite frequently over the last couple of weeks. This is Leeds United. We have to be held to a higher standard. And I'm sure he is as carried away on a tidal wave of emotion about being in charge of Leeds as anyone would be. But he still needs players to buy into the overall ethos of what he's trying to do. And it's that balancing act, I guess, between players like Gnonto being there and being unhappy, and taking a fee that doesn't necessarily represent value for money, because the 49ers group have taken over. They will want to get off on the right foot. They want to make sure they are getting value for money for any players who are sold. I'm sure they want to make sure that their recruitment is solid. But at the moment, it really does feel as though they've got too many plates spinning all at once for it to even become a cohesive conversation about whether or not they can get themselves into the promotion race as things stand. So I just wanted to touch upon it, really. I appreciate it's a relatively controversial subject to say at any point that as a neutral you have some sympathy or empathy for Leeds United because they are such a Marmite football club. But certainly, having read their comments this morning on social media, it does feel as though they are in a pit of despair. And if you were unaware of that, hopefully I have brought you up to speed on exactly why. Thanks very much for watching. As always, if you haven't liked this video, please do consider that, and do consider giving me a subscribe as well, because as I said on Friday and this morning, this channel, as much as it's been around 7 or 8 months, is very much in the infancy in terms of me putting these daily videos out. So hopefully it can grow relatively organically, and by pushing subscribe you are massively helping me in terms of getting up the algorithm. So thanks very much for watching, and speak to you again soon. Cheers.